A woman runs for her life from a man who haunted every part of her day, and in desperation, she crashes a wedding looking for refuge. What she finds instead is a mysterious billionaire who doesn't just offer her shelter. He makes a shocking declaration that changes everything. With a simple phrase, he pulls her from fear into a world of safety, luxury, and unexpected possibility. But danger still lurks, and every choice could push her back into the shadows she's trying to leave behind. Secrets, threats, and a hidden past collide as she navigates trust, power, and a life-altering decision that feels impossible. Will stepping into his world save her, or will it pull her deeper into chaos? Who can she really trust when love, danger, and redemption all hang in the balance? The evening sky deepens to purple as Maggie grips her steering wheel, her knuckles white against the dark leather. The strip mall's neon signs cast shifting colors across her face, splashes of harsh red and electric blue that highlight the tension in her jaw and the weariness around her eyes. She barely notices them. Her thoughts keep circling back to Lucas's words from hours earlier, replaying like a stuck record she can't shut off. "You'll come back because you always do." His voice had dripped with certainty, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth as he blocked her apartment doorway. He'd leaned against the frame, arms crossed over his chest, so confident in his power that he didn't even need to raise his voice. That quiet certainty had frightened her more than his shouting ever did. Maggie's hands shake as she reaches for the duffel bag she'd hastily packed, the zipper catching as she pulls it closer. 2 shirts folded messily, her favorite green blouse, and a faded t-shirt from her college days. Her old blue toothbrush with the bristles splayed outward from too many anxious nights. A handful of bills she hasn't paid yet, the due dates circled in red pen. At the bottom lies a worn photograph of Aunt Rosa, smiling from her garden last summer, dirt on her hands and pride in her eyes as she held up a basket of fresh tomatoes. The image brings a lump to Maggie's throat and a stinging sensation behind her eyelids. The radio plays softly, a wedding march drifting through the speakers like a ghost of someone else's happiness. Maggie had forgotten to change the station after driving past the local church earlier, where white ribbons had fluttered from the railings and rice still sparkled on the steps. The gentle melody feels like it's mocking her now, the promise of forever love twisted into something painful. She starts the car with trembling fingers, not knowing where she's heading but certain she can't stay still. The air coming through her cracked window carries the heavy scent of rain and wet asphalt, promising a storm that matches her inner turmoil. Other cars pass by on the main road, their headlights stretching into starbursts through her tears. She blinks hard, wiping her cheek with the back of her hand, forcing herself to focus on the road ahead rather than what she's leaving behind. "Just drive," she whispers to herself, the words barely audible over the engine's hum. Just keep driving. The 2-lane highway stretches dark before her, bordered by dense trees that form black silhouettes against the deepening night sky. The yellow center line disappears beneath her car like moments slipping away. But then, something catches her eye through the wall of darkness. Warm light spills across the pavement, golden and inviting, and the sound of music and laughter drifts from a weathered barn set back from the road. Paper lanterns string between wooden posts, swaying gently in the evening breeze like fireflies tethered by invisible threads. Maggie's heart pounds against her ribs as she slows the car and turns onto the gravel drive, a decision made more by instinct than thought. Small stones crunch under her tires as she parks at the edge of the lot, away from the cluster of other vehicles with their happy passengers. She sits there for a long moment, engine off but keys still in the ignition, watching shadows move across the barn's wide doors. The sounds of celebration feel surreal after the afternoon's darkness, like stumbling across color in a world she thought had turned permanently gray. Her legs tremble as she steps out of the car, muscles tight from tension and the long drive. She clutches her duffel bag close against her chest like a shield, the canvas rough against her fingers. The gravel shifts under her feet, with each hesitant step toward the barn, tiny pebbles working their way into the treads of her worn sneakers. String lights twinkle overhead like earthbound stars, leading the way to the entrance where laughter spills out into the night. As she approaches, the murmur of voices grows clearer, guests speaking in hushed, reverent tones as a ceremony unfolds within, punctuated by occasional bursts of delighted applause. Taking a deep breath that fills her lungs with the scent of fresh flowers and candle wax, Maggie moves forward into the warm glow spilling from the barn doors. The lamplight wraps around her like a blanket, soft and comforting against the chill that had settled in her bones hours ago. She steps inside, the wedding ceremony's gentle whispers washing over her like a cleansing tide. Her heart still races beneath her ribs, but something about the scene before her makes the tight knot in her chest loosen just a little. The gathered loved ones with their hopeful faces, the soft light catching on crystal glasses and satin ribbons, the air of hope and new beginnings. It all makes her feel less alone in the vastness of her fear. For this brief moment, she's found shelter in the glow of others' joy, even as her own world threatens to crumble beneath her feet. She stands there in the doorway, one foot in shadow and one in light, caught between what was and what might be. The ceremony continues to unfold before her. Vows spoken with trembling voices, hands clasped in promise, faces turned toward a shared future. The duffel bag weighs heavy in her hand, its contents meager but precious, a reminder of everything she's leaving behind and everything she has yet to face in the uncertain days ahead. The gravel crunches under Maggie's feet as she stumbles into the wedding space, her dusty shoes a stark contrast to the polished dress shoes and heels around her. String lights crisscross overhead, casting a soft glow on the stunned faces that turn toward her. Her entrance creates a ripple through the gathered crowd, like a stone dropped in still water. The whispers begin immediately, hushed but urgent, as guests lean toward one another behind cupped hands. The beautiful barn venue with its rustic wooden beams and carefully arranged wildflower centerpieces suddenly feels oppressively small as all eyes fix on her unexpected arrival. The bride, Dana, stands at the altar in flowing white, her veil catching the evening breeze. She blinks rapidly, mouth slightly open, her bouquet of roses drooping slightly in her surprised grip. The delicate lace of her gown shimmers in the golden light as her fingers tighten around the stem of her flowers. Beside her, the officiant's voice trails off mid-sentence, his leather-bound book lowering just a fraction. His eyebrows rise above wire-rimmed glasses as he glances between the bride and the intruder. "I'm sorry," Maggie whispers, though her voice carries in the sudden quiet. Her duffel bag feels impossibly heavy in her trembling hands, the worn canvas stained with what might be road dust or tears. Strands of her hair have escaped her hasty ponytail, framing a face pale with exhaustion. I need somewhere to shelter for a moment." The words come out thin and shaky, barely masking the fear underneath. Her eyes dart toward the exit, as though calculating how quickly she might need to flee again. A nearby usher, his boutonniere perfectly straight against his black jacket, frowns deeply. His shoulders stiffen beneath the crisp fabric as he takes a half step forward, clearly ready to escort her away from the ceremony. His hand reaches out, not quite touching her, but making his intention clear. But before he can move, an older woman in a powder blue dress speaks up from her seat in the third row. "Maggie?" Her voice is gentle with recognition, warm and steady amid the tension. "Maggie Thompson?" She stands, her silver hair catching the lantern light, the simple pearl necklace at her throat gleaming softly. "I worked with your Aunt Rosa at the hospital for years. Remember me? I'm Margaret Jenkins. Everyone called us the two Maggies on the floor." Maggie nods, relief washing over her face at this unexpected connection to home. Her shoulders drop slightly, the first hint of ease in her rigid posture. The older woman glances toward the front row, where the bride's mother sits in a champagne-colored dress, clutching a lace handkerchief. A silent understanding passes between the two women, the wordless communication of those who have weathered enough of life's storms to recognize another in need. "Come sit here, dear," the older woman says, gesturing to an empty space near the bride's mother. Her discreet nod carries the weight of authority, and the usher steps back, though his frown remains. His eyes follow Maggie suspiciously as she makes her way toward the offered seat. As Maggie makes her way down the aisle, clutching her duffel close like a shield, she feels another gaze on her. To the side of the wedding party stands a tall man in an impeccably fitted tuxedo, Elliot Carr. His composed presence draws attention without demanding it, a quiet strength evident in the set of his broad shoulders. His dark eyes follow her movement with quiet assessment, taking in her disheveled appearance and the tension in her shoulders. The subtle furrow between his brows suggests concern rather than judgment. Though he doesn't speak, there's something steadying in his calm observation, like an anchor in a shifting sea. The guests begin to settle, turning their attention back to the ceremony with reluctance. Programs rustle and chairs creak as people shift in their seats. Maggie slides into the offered seat, trying to make herself smaller, trying to breathe normally against the tightness in her chest. The bride's mother gives her a small, kind smile before facing forward again, her hand briefly, gently touching Maggie's arm in silent welcome. Then the sound cuts through the night. Tires on gravel, an engine's familiar rumble that Maggie would recognize anywhere. Her body goes rigid before her mind can even form the thought, every muscle tensing as though preparing for impact. Through the open barn doors, headlights sweep across the lawn in a harsh arc, illuminating the hanging lanterns from behind and casting long, menacing shadows across the carefully decorated space. The white fairy lights seem to dim in comparison to the harsh yellow beams slicing through the darkness. Lucas's truck. The blood drains from Maggie's face as she watches the shadow of his vehicle move across the grass. Her fingers dig into the duffel bag in her lap, knuckles white with tension, nails leaving half-moon impressions in the canvas. Her breathing becomes shallow, almost imperceptible, as though making herself invisible could somehow prevent what's coming. The older woman who welcomed her notices her reaction, glancing between Maggie and the door with growing concern, her weathered hand reaching over to cover Maggie's clenched fist. A murmur ripples through the gathered guests. Some crane their necks to see the source of the disturbance, while others shift uncomfortably in their seats, sensing the sudden charge in the air. Champagne glasses are set down with soft clinks, and a child in the back row asks a question too loudly, quickly hushed by his mother. The atmosphere tightens like a held breath, the joy of the ceremony giving way to something more uncertain, a collective tension that spreads like a contagion. Elliot's stance shifts ever so slightly, his attention now divided between the ceremony and the barn entrance. He moves his weight to the balls of his feet, one hand sliding casually into his pocket, where it curls into a loose fist. Though his expression remains neutral, there's a new alertness in his posture, a readiness that wasn't there before. His eyes flick from Maggie's frightened face to the door and back again, making connections with the measured precision that characterizes everything about him. The officiant clears his throat, trying to draw attention back to the ceremony. But the tension remains. He shuffles his pages with nervous fingers, searching for his place in the suddenly fragmented ritual. Maggie sits frozen in her seat, every muscle coiled tight as the headlights disappear and the sound of the engine cuts off somewhere in the parking area. In the momentary silence, she can hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears, counting down the seconds before an inevitable confrontation. The string lights continue to sway gently in the evening breeze, creating dancing shadows that seem to mock the stillness that has fallen over the wedding guests, their cheerful glow at odds with the dread that now fills the beautiful space. Heavy footsteps echo through the barn entrance, reverberating against the wooden beams overhead. Lucas appears in the doorway, his broad frame backlit by the harsh yellow parking lot lights that cast an ominous shadow across the aisle. His usual charm is nowhere to be seen, replaced by barely contained fury that makes him seem larger, more threatening. The muscles in his jaw work visibly as he scans the room. "Maggie." His voice cuts through the ceremony like a knife, slicing the peaceful atmosphere into jagged pieces. "What do you think you're doing?" The guests turn in their seats, whispers rising like leaves in the wind, rustling from one row to the next. Some lean toward each other, covering their mouths with hands. Others stare openly. Maggie shrinks further into a chair, her chest so tight she can barely breathe. Her fingers dig into the wooden seat beneath her, seeking something solid to anchor her against the wave of panic threatening to pull her under. Lucas strides down the aisle, his boots loud against the wooden floor, each step a thunderclap in the now silent barn. His cologne, too strong, too familiar, reaches her before he does. "I've been looking everywhere for you." His tone carries a false concern that makes Maggie's skin crawl, the practiced performance of worry that she knows too well. "You had me worried sick. Your phone going straight to voicemail, not answering my texts." "Please," Maggie whispers, her voice barely audible even to herself. "Not here." Her gaze darts desperately around the room, seeking an exit that doesn't require passing. Him. But Lucas is already closing in, his face flushed with anger, eyes glittering dangerously under the string lights. "Not here? Where then? After you sneak away like some kind of thief?" His voice rises with each word, bouncing off the rafters. "After everything I've done for you? After all the sacrifices I've made?" The older woman beside Maggie starts to stand, her weathered face pinched with concern, but Lucas cuts her off with a sharp look that freezes her halfway up. "You want to air our dirty laundry in public? Fine." He turns to address the stunned wedding guests, arms spread wide like a performer taking the stage. "Did she tell you how she lives in an apartment I paid for? How I've supported her while she can't hold down a decent job? How I've picked up the pieces every single time?" His laugh is ugly, mocking, a sound Maggie has learned to dread. "Did she mention how she always does this? Runs away, plays the victim, then comes crawling back when reality sets in?" Maggie feels the heat of shame creep up her neck and flood her cheeks as dozens of eyes turn toward her, some sympathetic, others judging. She wishes she could disappear through the floorboards. The bride and groom stand forgotten at the altar, their perfect moment shattered, the bride's bouquet hanging limply at her side. That's enough. The words come quietly but firmly from the side of the room, carrying an authority that commands attention without raising volume. Elliot Carr steps forward from where he'd been seated near the wall, his tall frame and calm demeanor drawing all eyes. He moves with deliberate grace, not hurried but purposeful, placing himself between Lucas and Maggie. His tailored suit sets him apart as much as his composed expression. Lucas sneers, looking Elliot up and down. "This isn't your business. This is between me and her." He tries to step around Elliot, but the taller man shifts slightly, maintaining the barrier. "Actually," Elliot says, his voice level and clear like water over smooth stones. "It is." He turns slightly, extending his hand toward Maggie, palm up in invitation rather than demand. I believe you were saying you needed a place to stay tonight." The words hang in the air like suspended crystal. For a moment, everyone, including Maggie, stares at him in shock, the barn completely silent except for the distant sound of crickets through the open doors. Elliot continues smoothly, as if discussing nothing more complicated than the weather. "I have a guest suite at my estate, just 10 minutes from here. It's private, comfortable, and completely at your disposal." His steady gaze never wavers. "You're welcome to stay there tonight, or as long as you need." His eyes meet Maggie's directly, conveying more than his measured words. "I'll provide a signed affidavit confirming your presence there, should you require documentation of your whereabouts for any reason." Maggie looks at his offered hand, then at his face. His expression is composed but kind, his eyes steady and reassuring without a hint of judgment. In that moment, she sees the lifeline he's throwing her, not just shelter, but legal protection, a witness, a record of her choices. Lucas steps forward, his face dark with rage, a vein pulsing at his temple. "You can't be serious. You don't even know her. You have no idea what she's like, what she does." "I know enough," Elliot replies, never taking his eyes off Maggie, his hand still extended, patient and unwavering. Maggie's hand trembles as she reaches out and takes Elliot's. His fingers are warm and steady around hers as she stands, drawing strength from his calm presence. Her knees feel weak, but she forces herself to straighten her spine. Lucas's voice drops to a dangerous growl, low enough that only those closest can hear. "This isn't over, Maggie. You think you can hide behind some rich guy's charity? I'll be back, and you'll regret this little show you've put on." His gaze flicks between them, calculating. "You always come back, and we both know why." He turns and storms out, his threats echoing off the barn walls, the door banging shut behind him. The silence that follows is deafening, thick with tension and unspoken questions. Elliot quietly guides Maggie toward the exit, his hand at her elbow, providing subtle support as her legs threaten to give way. He doesn't hurry her, allowing her to move at her own pace. Behind them, the officiant can be heard trying to restore order to the ceremony, his voice overly bright as he apologizes for the interruption. The night air is cool on Maggie's flushed face as they walk to the parking lot, the gentle breeze carrying the scent of honeysuckle and freshly cut grass. Stars dot the velvet sky above them, indifferent to the human drama below. Elliot's car sits at the edge, a dark, expensive sedan that seems to absorb the moonlight rather than reflect it. He opens the passenger door for her, waiting until she's settled before closing it softly. They drive in silence for several minutes, tall trees lining the winding road and cutting geometric patterns against the star-filled sky. The car's interior is immaculate, smelling faintly of leather and something subtle that might be sandalwood. Maggie stares at her hands in her lap, fingers twisting around each other, overwhelmed by shame, gratitude, and lingering fear. The radio plays softly, classical music that somehow soothes her racing heart. Finally, she finds her voice, though it comes out rougher than she intended. "Why help me? You don't know anything about me or that situation." Elliot keeps his eyes on the road, his profile calm in the dashboard lights, but his response comes without hesitation. "Because people without anyone shouldn't be left to the wolves." He pauses, then adds quietly, "And because I recognized something in your eyes that I've seen before." The simple honesty in his words brings unexpected tears to Maggie's eyes. She blinks rapidly, turning to look out the window as they round a curve, not wanting him to see her cry. And there it is, Elliot's estate, rising from the darkness like a fortress. The stone walls and warm windows promise safety, a golden glow spilling onto manicured lawns. But Maggie can't help wondering what other changes this night will bring, and how long this sanctuary will last before Lucas finds her again. The heavy wooden door clicks shut behind Maggie as she enters the guest suite, leaving her alone for the first time since her escape. The room wraps around her like a gentle embrace, all soft cream walls and plush carpeting in muted earth tones. A small sitting area with a comfortable-looking armchair and love seat leads to double doors that must open to the bedroom, and everything speaks of quiet luxury without being showy. The subtle scent of lavender lingers in the air, as if someone had thought to make the space not just visually welcoming, but soothing to all senses. Her attention catches on a silver tray placed carefully on a side table near the window, where afternoon light filters through gauzy curtains. Steam rises from a delicate china teapot with hand-painted flowers along the rim, and beside it sits a folded note. The paper is thick and cream-colored with a subtle watermark, the handwriting precise and elegant. Ms. Walker, please make yourself comfortable. If you need anything, call Jonah at this number. He's available 24/7. The number is written below, along with instructions for the house Wi-Fi and a reminder that the kitchen is always stocked if she gets hungry. There's also a small dish of butter cookies arranged in a perfect circle, as if someone had taken extra care with even this small detail. Maggie's hands shake slightly as she pours the tea. Chamomile. She notices from the gentle scent that rises with the steam. The warmth of the cup seeps into her cold fingers. She hasn't realized how chilled she'd become until now, her body finally registering the physical aftermath of so much fear and adrenaline. The bedroom reveals an equally welcoming space, with a king-sized bed topped with crisp white linens and what looks like the softest duvet she's ever seen. Plump pillows are arranged against the headboard, and a throw blanket in soft blue is folded neatly at the foot of the bed. A door to the left leads to an ensuite bathroom that's bigger than her entire apartment kitchen, with marble countertops and a glass-enclosed shower that could fit 3 people comfortably. She sets the tea down on the nightstand and pulls out her phone, fingers hovering over Aunt Rosa's number. She needs to hear her aunt's voice, needs the comfort of family and the reassurance that comes from someone who's known her since childhood. But when she dials, her heart nearly stops. Lucas's number flashes on the voicemail pickup. She ends the call immediately, her pulse racing, a cold wave of fear washing over her. Of course he'd be monitoring her usual contacts. Of course he would have thought that far ahead. The bathroom beckons, and Maggie gives in to its promise of warmth and cleansing. The shower is one of those rainfall types with multiple settings and side jets, and she stands under the hot spray until her muscles begin to unlock from their frozen state. The water pressure is perfect, washing away not just the day, but something deeper. The lingering feeling of being watched, judged, controlled. The towels hanging on a heated rack are thick and soft, and someone has thoughtfully placed new toiletries on the counter. Everything she might need, down to a new toothbrush still in its package, gentle face wash, and even a bottle of lotion that smells faintly of vanilla. As she dries off, her mind keeps circling back to the events at the wedding. The memory of Lucas's face, twisted with anger, makes her shiver despite the steam-filled bathroom. She can still feel his fingers digging into her arm, still hear the low, threatening tone that only she could hear while he smiled at the other guests. But then there was Elliot, his calm presence like a wall between her and chaos, his voice steady when he intervened. She's not sure what to make of his offer. Marriage? It had to be just for show, a way to throw Lucas off balance. But the practical help he's offering is real enough, and there was something in his eyes when he looked at her, not pity, but understanding. Wrapped in a fluffy robe she found hanging on the bathroom door, Maggie begins exploring the room more thoroughly. The closet reveals empty hangers waiting for clothes she doesn't have. The dresser drawers are empty except for extra blankets and a packet of lavender sachets, but atop it sits a silver frame she hadn't noticed before. The photograph shows a young woman in a nurse's uniform, her smile bright and kind, her eyes crinkling at the corners in a way that suggests genuine joy. Something about her seems familiar, tugging at Maggie's memory. Maggie picks up the frame, studying the face more closely. The woman has Elliot's eyes, the same steady kindness in them, the same quiet determination. This must be his sister. She remembers Jonah mentioning something about Elliot losing her several years ago to some illness, though he hadn't shared details. Suddenly, the memory clicks into place. Years ago, when Maggie's mother was in the hospital during her final months, there had been a nurse who'd gone above and beyond, staying past her shift to sit with them, bringing extra blankets without being asked, explaining complicated medical terms in ways they could understand. She'd even smuggled in homemade cookies once, saying everyone deserved a little sweetness during hard times. The name tag in the photo confirms it. Sarah Carr. The connection feels like a small gift, a tiny thread linking her present sanctuary to a past moment of kindness. Maggie places the frame on the bedside table, propping it against the lamp where the warm light catches Sarah's smile and makes the silver frame glow softly. Finally, exhaustion begins to overtake anxiety. Maggie slips between the cool sheets, their crisp freshness another small comfort against her skin. The bed is almost too comfortable after her worn mattress at home, but her body is too tired to care. The duvet settles over her like a cloud, heavy enough to feel secure, but light enough that she doesn't feel trapped. Still, sleep comes in fits and starts. Every car passing outside makes her tense. Every shadow holds potential threats. The unfamiliar ceiling above her becomes a movie screen for her worst fears. Lucas finding her, the humiliation of returning home, the disappointment in her aunt's eyes if she fails again. She finds herself looking at the photograph between bouts of restless dozing. There's something steadying about Sarah's presence, even just in image form. Like her brother, she seems to radiate that same quiet strength, that sense that everything will be okay if you just hold on long enough. Maggie wonders what Sarah would say to her now, what advice a woman who helped others through their darkest moments might offer. The night deepens, the moon casting silver patterns through the gaps in the curtains. Gradually, Maggie's heartbeat begins to slow, to match the peaceful rhythm of the house around her. From somewhere distant, she hears the faint ticking of a grandfather clock, counting out seconds of safety. Her thoughts drift, no longer racing with panic but moving more slowly, like leaves floating on a gentle stream. The tension in her shoulders finally releases, her breathing deepens. The last thing she sees before sleep finally claims her is Sarah's kind smile watching over her, a silent guardian in the soft lamplight, promising that tomorrow might hold something better than yesterday. The morning sun streams through gauzy curtains, casting soft shadows across the guest room. Maggie blinks awake, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. The events of the previous night come rushing back. The wedding, Lucas's arrival, Elliot's unexpected intervention. She finds her way to the small kitchenette attached to the guest suite, where an electric kettle and selection of teas wait on the counter. Her hands move automatically through the familiar motions of making tea, finding comfort in the routine. A gentle knock at the door makes her jump, splashing hot water on her hand. "Come in," she calls, trying to keep her voice steady. Jonah enters, carrying a tray with toast, butter, and jam. His manner is brisk but kind, reminding her of a busy hospital administrator. "Good morning, Ms. Hart. I trust you slept well?" "Yes, thank you." She notices dark circles under his eyes and wonders if he's been up all night, making arrangements. He sets the tray down and pulls something from his pocket. A new smartphone, still in its packaging. "This is for you. Secure line, can't be traced. We should transfer your essential contacts." His tone makes it sound as routine as ordering office supplies. "I couldn't possibly—" Maggie starts to protest. "You can and you will." Jonah interrupts, not unkindly. It's a basic safety measure. Elliot insists. The mention of Elliot brings a flush to her cheeks. About last night, that offer of marriage will be discussed over coffee. Jonah finishes. Elliot's waiting in the main kitchen when you're ready. Down the hall, take a left at the grandfather clock. Before she can respond, he's heading for the door, pausing only to add, "Eat your toast first. Everything's easier with breakfast in your stomach." 20 minutes later, Maggie follows Jonah's directions through the sprawling house. The kitchen she enters is surprisingly homey. Warm wood cabinets, well-used cookbooks on open shelves, copper pots hanging from a rack. Elliot stands at a professional-grade coffee maker, his formal attire from last night replaced by a casual sweater and slacks. He turns at her entrance, and she's struck again by his calm presence. "Good morning," he says, gesturing to a stool at the island. "Coffee?" She nods, grateful for something to do with her hands. The coffee he serves is rich and perfectly prepared. "About last night," Elliot begins, his voice measured. "I want to be clear about what I'm offering. You need a safe place to stay and documentation of your whereabouts. I can provide both. No strings attached." He slides a paper across the counter. A simple statement declaring her presence at his estate, dated and ready for his signature. This is all it needs to be. No marriage required. Relief floods through Maggie, followed quickly by embarrassment at her own relief. "Thank you," she manages. "I'm sorry for disrupting the wedding." "Don't be," Elliot says firmly. "Dana's actually thanking you. Says you gave her wedding a dramatic flair worthy of a movie." His slight smile takes any sting from the words. He pauses, seeming to consider his next words carefully. "I should mention, I recognized your name last night. You volunteered at Memorial Hospital, pediatric ward, about 8 years ago." Maggie nods, surprised. "Tuesday afternoons. I read stories to the kids. My sister Sarah was a nurse there." His voice softened slightly. "She talked about you, said you had a gift for calming the most anxious children." "Sarah Carr." Maggie breathes, the connection from the photograph solidifying. "She saved my cousin Tommy. He had an allergic reaction, stopped breathing. She was there in seconds, knew exactly what to do." Elliot's eyes warm with memory. That was Sarah, always in the right place at the right time. He takes a sip of coffee, then adds quietly, "We lost her 3 years ago, cancer." "I'm so sorry," Maggie says, meaning it deeply. "She was special. The kids adored her. She made everyone feel safe." A moment of shared understanding passes between them, a thread of connection through Sarah's memory. The moment breaks as Maggie's new phone buzzes on the counter. An unknown number flashes on the screen. They both know who it is. Elliot's expression shifts to one of focused determination. "We need to talk about immediate next steps. Jonah's already working on some options." Maggie stares at the phone as it continues to vibrate, Lucas's invisible presence filling the kitchen. But here, in this warm space with the ghost of Sarah's kindness and Elliot's steady support, she feels something she hasn't in a long time. Hope. That same afternoon, sunlight slants through the study windows as Elliot, Jonah, and Maggie gather around a heavy oak desk. Papers spread before them like battle plans, each document another piece of protection. The affidavit is straightforward. Jonah explains, tapping a crisp sheet of paper. It simply states you were here, on these premises at this time. His efficiency is oddly comforting to Maggie, like having a very determined guardian angel in a business suit. Elliot reads through the document carefully before signing. His signature flows across the bottom in sure strokes. "Keep this safe," he tells Maggie. It may seem like a small thing, but it establishes a clear timeline. And speaking of timelines, Jonah adds, We should discuss social media. He slides a legal pad toward her. I recommend going dark for now. No posts, no updates, nothing that could give away your location. Maggie nods. I barely use it anyway. Just a Facebook account I check sometimes. Good. That makes things simpler. Jonah makes a note. If the harassment continues, we should consider filing a police report. Having a paper trail matters. The word harassment makes Maggie's stomach clench. It sounds so clinical, so neat, nothing like the messy reality of Lucas's anger, his threats wrapped in sweet talk, his way of making everything seem like her fault. We'll take it one step at a time, Elliot says quietly, as if reading her thoughts. His calm voice anchors her to the present moment. Your car, Jonah continues. We should retrieve it from the venue before Lucas comes back. Maggie finishes. The thought of returning makes her hands shake slightly. I'll drive. Elliot offers. Jonah can follow in another car, quick and simple. The drive back to the wedding venue is tense but uneventful. The barn stands peaceful in the afternoon light, string lights now dark and limp in the breeze. No sign of Lucas's truck. Maggie hurries to her car, heart pounding until she confirms her duffel is still there, untouched in the back seat. She clutches it close, this small collection of her life's fragments. The venue owner says Lucas left last night. Jonah reports, returning from a quick check inside. Made quite a scene apparently, but he was alone. Relief washes through Maggie, followed by a familiar wave of guilt. Lucas always knew how to make her feel responsible for his outbursts. Back at the estate. They regroup in the kitchen. Maggie's fingers trace the worn strap of her duffel, while Elliot and Jonah discuss options. Aunt Rosa's is about an hour away, she says finally. I need to let her know what's happening. The words come slowly, weighted with everything left unsaid. How Rosa had warned her about Lucas, how she'd ignored those warnings, how she'd slowly stopped visiting because Lucas didn't like her interfering family. Elliot nods. We can drive you. It's getting late, but the roads will be quiet. I couldn't ask. You're not asking. He interrupts gently. I'm offering. Jonah checks his phone. I'll make some calls, set up a security consultation for tomorrow. Your aunt's address? Maggie hesitates only briefly before sharing it. These men have already done so much to help her. Trust comes a little easier now. While Jonah makes arrangements, Elliot helps Maggie gather her few belongings. In the guest suite, she pauses by the photograph of Sarah in her nurse's uniform. She would have liked you, Elliot says from the doorway. She always fought for the underdogs. I'm not... Maggie starts to protest. You're not a victim. Elliot agrees. You're a survivor. There's a difference. The words settle something in Maggie's chest, a quiet recognition of her own strength. The sun is setting as they load into Elliot's car, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Jonah gives final instructions about the secure phone, emergency contacts, and next steps. Call if you need anything. He insists. Any time, day or night. As they pull away from the estate, Maggie watches it shrink in the side mirror. Just 24 hours ago, she was fleeing in terror. Now she's moving forward with purpose, even if that purpose is simply reclaiming her own life. Elliot drives steadily, his presence beside her both reassuring and slightly unreal. The road stretches ahead, familiar yet different somehow. Everything is different now. Thank you, she says softly as houses give way to farmland. For all of this. I know it's not normal to help a stranger like this. Sometimes the right thing isn't normal. Elliot responds, eyes on the road. Sometimes it's just right. They drive on as dusk deepens, heading toward Aunt Rosa's town, toward whatever comes next. The porch light casts a warm glow as Elliot's car pulls away, leaving Maggie standing before Aunt Rosa's familiar blue door. Her heart thuds against her ribs as she raises her hand to knock. Before her knuckles touch wood, the door swings open. "Maggie?" Aunt Rosa's eyes widen, taking in the duffel bag, the rumpled clothes, the shadows under her niece's eyes. "I'm sorry it's so late." Maggie starts, but Rosa pulls her into a fierce hug that smells of lavender soap and fresh bread. "Don't you dare apologize. Come in, come in." Rosa ushers her inside, where the kitchen light spills golden across worn linoleum. "When's the last time you ate properly?" Maggie tries to remember, but can't. Everything before the wedding venue feels distant and blurry. "Sit." Rosa points to the kitchen table, its surface covered in a cheerful checked cloth. She bustles around the small pantry, pulling out bread, cheese, and homemade pickles. "First we feed you, then we talk." The simple meal appears before Maggie. Thick slices of bread, sharp cheddar, Rosa's famous dill pickles. A glass of cold milk follows. Maggie hadn't realized how hungry she was until the first bite touches her tongue. Rosa settles across from her, hands folded, patient but alert. The old kitchen clock ticks steadily in the background, marking time as Maggie slowly finds her words. "Lucas came to my apartment," she begins, fingers tearing a piece of bread into smaller and smaller pieces. "He wouldn't leave. He said I'd come back because I always do." Rosa's face darkens, but she stays quiet, letting Maggie speak at her own pace. "I packed what I could and just drove. Ended up at this wedding venue. There was this man, Elliot." The story spills out in fragments. The confrontation, Elliot's unexpected help, the guest suite, the temporary safety. When Maggie finishes, Rosa reaches across the table and covers her trembling hands with steady ones. "Child, you did the right thing. The exact right thing." Something inside Maggie's chest loosens at those words. Tears she's been holding back for days start falling. Rosa lets her cry for a moment, then stands with purpose. "Now we make plans." She retrieves her ancient address book from beside the rotary phone. "My friend Martha's been practicing family law for 30 years. She'll know what to do." While Rosa dials, Maggie notices small changes in the familiar kitchen. New curtains with tiny blue flowers, a different arrangement of magnets on the fridge, fresh herbs growing in mason jars on the windowsill. She'd stopped visiting months ago because Lucas always had reasons why they couldn't come. "Martha, yes, I know it's late. It's important." Rosa's voice is firm. "My niece needs help. Yes, that kind of help." The conversation is brief but productive. Rosa hangs up and immediately starts writing on her notepad. "Martha will see you tomorrow afternoon. Meanwhile, you'll stay here." "But Lucas might—" "Let him try." Rosa's tone could cut steel. She disappears into her bedroom and returns with an old flip phone. "Use this instead of yours. Pay as you go, harder to trace. And tomorrow we're changing your passwords on everything." Maggie stares at the phone, overwhelmed by her aunt's efficiency. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't thank family for being family." Rosa pulls a patchwork quilt from the hall closet, the one Maggie's grandmother made decades ago. "Now, the couch isn't fancy, but it's comfortable enough." The living room looks exactly as Maggie remembers. Family photos on every surface, the old radio that plays only the gospel station, the worn but well-loved furniture. Rosa helps her make up the couch with sheets and pillows, tucking the quilt around her like she did when Maggie was small. "Rest now," Rosa says softly. "You're safe here." The radio plays quiet hymns as Rosa moves through her nighttime routine. Maggie lies under the familiar weight of her grandmother's quilt, listening to the symphony of ordinary sounds. Water running in the bathroom, floorboards creaking, the persistent tick of the kitchen clock. Through the window, crickets add their evening chorus to the night. A car passes occasionally on the quiet street, but none slow down or stop. Rosa appears one last time to check on her, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "The Lord works in mysterious ways," she murmurs, "but He brought you here, and that's what matters." Later, in the dark, Maggie listens to the house settling around her. The radio plays Amazing Grace in soft, crackly tones. The kitchen clock marks steady time. Crickets chirp their endless song. She pulls the quilt closer, breathing in its familiar scent of cedar and safety. For the first time in longer than she can remember, her muscles begin to truly relax. Here, in this house full of memory and love, watched over by her fierce, practical aunt, Maggie feels the first stirrings of peace. The night deepens, the hymns fade to static, the crickets sing on, and Maggie finally sleeps. 2 days passed in the quiet safety of Aunt Rosa's house. Maggie kept to herself, helping with small chores and avoiding windows. On the morning of the 3rd day, she needed to get out, if only for an hour. "I'm just going to Miller's Diner," she told Rosa, clutching the old flip phone. "I need to clear my head, maybe get some real coffee." Rosa studied her with concerned eyes. "Take the back way there, and call if you need me." The walk to Miller's was short, past tidy houses with late summer flowers. Maggie chose a booth near the kitchen, away from the windows. The familiar smell of coffee and pancakes wrapped around her like a warm blanket. Sally, who'd worked there since Maggie was in high school, brought coffee without being asked. "Good to see you, honey. The usual?" Maggie nodded, grateful for the normality of it all. She pulled out Rosa's phone to check the time, careful to avoid social media. Jonah had been clear about staying offline. The bell above the door chimed. Maggie's heart stopped. Lucas stood in the doorway, his presence filling the small diner. Several customers looked up, then quickly away. His eyes locked onto her. "There you are," his voice carried across the room. "Playing your little games." Maggie's hands trembled around her coffee cup. She forced herself to stay seated, to breathe. Lucas strode over, pulling up a chair, uninvited. "That was quite a show at the wedding, getting that rich guy to play hero. Really clever, Mags." "Please leave," she whispered. "Leave? After you embarrassed me in front of half the county?" His voice rose. "After you ran off with some stranger and let everyone think—" "Lucas." Mrs. Peterson, their old neighbor, stood up from her booth. "That's enough." He ignored her. "You think you can just walk away? After everything? What about the things I know about your family? About your dad's drinking? About—" "I said that's enough!" Mrs. Peterson's voice was steel. Other customers were staring now, murmuring. Officer Dave Collins, having breakfast at the counter, approached slowly. "Everything okay here?" "No." Lucas snapped. "My girlfriend's been missing for days, staging some domestic drama." "Ex-girlfriend," Maggie corrected quietly. "Please just go." Officer Collins looked between them. "Sir, maybe you should step outside." "Why? I haven't done anything wrong. She's the one who—" "You're disturbing everyone's breakfast," Collins said mildly. But Maggie saw the uncertainty in his eyes. No laws broken yet, no clear threat to act on. Rosa's phone buzzed. Jonah's number. "Miss Hart." His calm voice was reassuring. "We are aware of the situation. Mr. Carr has lawyers preparing restraining order paperwork. Just stay where you are, in public view." Lucas was still talking, his voice getting louder. "You think you can hide behind rich people and cops? Everyone knows what you are, Maggie. Everyone knows you'll come crawling back." Mrs. Peterson moved closer. "Lucas Matthews, I've known you since you were in diapers. Your mama would be ashamed of this behavior." Something in Lucas's face twisted. He stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. "Fine. Have it your way. But this isn't over, Mags. Not even close. He stormed out, the bell jangling violently. Through the window, Maggie watched him punch his steering wheel before peeling out of the parking lot. The diner was silent. Then Sally appeared with a fresh cup of coffee and a slice of pie. "On the house, honey." Officer Collins lingered. "You want to file a report?" Maggie shook her head, hands still shaking. Not yet." "Well, if you change your mind." He left his card on the table. Mrs. Peterson sat across from her. "You need a ride home?" "No, thank you. I'll call my aunt." The diner slowly returned to normal. Quiet conversations, clinking silverware, coffee being poured. But Maggie felt exposed, raw. Lucas's threats echoed in her head. What would he reveal? What would he do next? She called Rosa, voice trembling. "Can you come get me?" Rosa arrived in minutes, as if she'd been waiting ready. The short drive home was silent, but Rosa's hand found hers at every stop sign, squeezing gently. Back in the safety of Rosa's kitchen, Maggie sank into a chair. "He's not going to stop." "Then we won't stop either," Rosa said firmly, putting the kettle on for tea. "We'll do whatever we need to do to keep you safe." Maggie nodded, but fear had settled deep in her bones. Lucas knew too much, had too many ways to hurt her. And now he was angry, truly angry, in a way she'd never seen before. The old clock ticked, steadily on the wall, marking time in a world that suddenly felt much more dangerous. Aunt Rosa's ancient desktop computer wheezed to life that afternoon, the beige monitor flickering twice before settling into a steady glow. She insisted on checking her email, though Maggie rarely saw her use the machine for anything beyond the occasional church bulletin or family photo. The familiar dial-up tone, a nostalgic symphony of electronic screeches and static, brought an odd comfort to Maggie as she sipped her tea, until Rosa's sharp intake of breath shattered the moment. "Oh, Lord," Rosa muttered, her reading glasses slipping down her nose as she leaned closer to the screen. Maggie looked up from her tea, the steam warming her face. "What's wrong?" Rosa turned the screen with surprising agility for the clunky monitor. There, in bold red letters across a gossip website she'd never heard of, blazed the headline, "Billionaire's surprise wedding rescue. Elliot Carr's romantic gesture leads to whirlwind engagement." Below was a grainy photo, clearly taken with a telephoto lens, of Maggie and Elliot leaving his estate that morning. The angle made their casual conversation look intimate. Her head tilted towards him to hear better, his hand gesturing as he spoke, their bodies angled toward each other. The story spun wild tales about their electric connection at the wedding, calling it a fairy tale romance, and speculating about how the mystery woman captured the heart of Boston's most eligible bachelor. "It's everywhere," Rosa said, clicking her mouse with decisive taps, scrolling through social media shares. The computer struggled to keep up with each new page. "Sarah from church just sent it to me, and look, 3 more people shared it in our town group. Everyone's talking." Maggie's hands went cold, her tea forgotten. "This can't be happening." A temporary phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, Elliot's number flashing on the screen. Her heart hammered as she answered. Miss Hart. It was Jonah's steady voice, calm as ever despite the circumstances. "I assume you've seen the article." "How did they—" "Freelance photographer. They've been watching Mr. Carr's estate since his sister's passing, hoping for scandal or signs of emotional breakdown." Jonah paused, and she heard papers shuffling in the background. This could work in our favor. How could this possibly help? Maggie's voice cracked as she paced the small kitchen, one arm wrapped protectively around her middle. "The publicity makes it harder for Lucas to act without scrutiny. His every move will be examined now, and it gives us legal leverage, Any harassment now looks like jealous stalking of a high-profile couple rather than a private domestic dispute. But it's not true. Maggie stopped by the kitchen window, staring out at Rosa's neatly tended garden without seeing it. No. Jonah agreed, his voice matter-of-fact. But sometimes perception creates protection better than truth can. Mr. Carr suggests we neither confirm nor deny. Let it die naturally while we shore up legal measures. People will move on to the next scandal soon enough. Maggie sank into a chair at the kitchen table, the wooden seat creaking beneath her. I hate this. More lies, more manipulation. I left Lucas to escape exactly this kind of thing. I understand. Jonah's voice softened unexpectedly. But your safety comes first. We've lined up witnesses from the diner incident. The lawyers are preparing restraining order documentation. This media circus, unpleasant as it is, buys us time to do things properly, by the book. Rosa took the phone from Maggie's trembling hand, her weathered fingers warm and steady. Mr. Jonah, this is Rosa Hart. You tell Mr. Carr we appreciate his help, but my niece isn't some chess piece to be moved around a board. She's been through enough manipulation to last a lifetime. Of course not, ma'am. Mr. Carr wants to ensure Miss Hart maintains complete autonomy in all decisions. We're merely presenting options. Jonah's tone was respectful, perhaps even a touch deferential to Rosa's directness. After more discussion of practical details, contact information for the lawyers, security precautions, and a timeline for legal filings, they hung up. Maggie stared at her hands, now folded tightly in her lap. What if this makes Lucas angrier? What if this public story pushes him over the edge? Then we'll be ready, Rosa said firmly, pulling open the junk drawer and extracting a spiral notebook with a faded floral cover. She set it on the table with purpose. Now, let's write down everything. Dates, witnesses, incidents, every text message, every unexpected visit, every threat. Leave no stone unturned. The next 2 days passed in a blur of quiet preparation. Maggie documented Lucas's pattern of control, the surprise visits to her workplace that left her colleagues uncomfortable, the monitoring of her phone and social accounts, the subtle threats wrapped in sweet words. Rosa's lawyer friend, a retired gentleman with kind eyes and a stern mouth, helped file paperwork with steady hands. They gathered statements from Mrs. Peterson and others at the diner who'd witnessed Lucas's behavior. The tabloid story faded slightly, but didn't die completely. Each day brought new variations, some sites speculating about wedding dates, others wondering if it was a business arrangement, a few questioning if Elliot was rebounding after family tragedy. Maggie caught whispers at the grocery store when she stood in the checkout line, saw sideways glances at the post office when she mailed the legal documents. Each one felt like a small betrayal of truth, another piece of her story twisted beyond recognition. That evening, she sat with Rosa at their usual dinner of meatloaf and green beans, the plates chipped but familiar, the silverware mismatched but polished. The food was comforting in its simplicity. Rosa's meatloaf recipe unchanged in 30 years, the beans fresh from a neighbor's garden. But anxiety churned beneath the surface calm, making each bite taste like cardboard. What if it's not enough? Maggie pushed beans around her plate, creating little green islands in the gravy. The restraining order, the witnesses, the documentation. Lucas always finds a way. Then we'll find another way, Rosa said, reaching for the salt shaker shaped like a little church. We always do. The good Lord doesn't give us more than we can handle. But Maggie saw the worry in her aunt's eyes, the slight crease between her brows that hadn't been there before, heard the slight tremor in her voice when she spoke of the future. They were both thinking of Lucas's unpredictability, his ability to charm authorities and twist narratives, to present himself as the reasonable one while making her seem hysterical. The kitchen clock ticked steadily on the wall, marking each second with mechanical precision. Outside, crickets began their evening chorus, a soothing backdrop to their meal. Everything looked normal, peaceful even, the yellow curtains fluttering in the breeze, the familiar scent of Rosa's cooking, the comfortable silence of family. But the fear remained, a constant undercurrent beneath their quiet meal, like a river flowing silently beneath thin ice. Rosa reached across the table and squeezed Maggie's hand, her palm warm and slightly rough from years of work. They sat there in understanding silence, two women facing an uncertain storm, drawing strength from each other's presence, while the evening shadows lengthened across the worn linoleum floor. 2 days after the tabloid story broke, Maggie's phone lit up with a message from Elliot. He asked if she'd help sort donations at the estate, blankets and supplies heading to the local veterans' shelter. A chance to do something useful, he wrote, away from all the noise. Maggie found herself nodding at the screen. The past days of hiding and planning had left her feeling hollow. She texted back a simple, yes. The estate looked different in daylight. Volunteers bustled around the converted garage, sorting piles of blankets, toiletries, and warm clothing. Maggie rolled up her sleeves and dove in, grateful for the familiar work of organizing and helping. "You've got a system going already," Jonah noted, watching her arrange boxes by size and content. "Old habit from the hospital." Maggie labeled each container clearly. "Makes distribution easier. Finally, someone who speaks sense." Jonah grinned. "These society types usually just throw things in boxes and call it charity." "Hey now." Maggie smiled back. Some of us common folk are just as disorganized. The morning passed in steady work. Maggie found herself talking easily with the other volunteers, showing them efficient ways to pack and sort. She knelt beside an elderly woman struggling with heavy boxes and gently suggested a better method. "You're good at this," Elliot said quietly, appearing at her side. Maggie looked up, brushing hair from her face. "It's nothing special, just practical stuff. Practical matters." Elliot handed her a stack of cards. These came from the shelter. The veterans wanted to thank everyone involved. Maggie read the handwritten notes, something tight in her chest loosening. Real people, real gratitude. No manipulation, no masks. By afternoon, most volunteers had left. Maggie sat in the estate's kitchen, sipping water while Elliot made coffee. Jonah popped in with another joke about society ladies and their charitable impulses, making Maggie laugh despite herself. The kitchen radio played softly, old songs, gentle melodies. Something about the peaceful moment, the simple work accomplished, made Maggie's guard slip. "I left on a Tuesday night," she said suddenly. "Lucas had hidden my keys again, claiming he was protecting me from making rash decisions." Elliot set down his coffee, listening. He'd done it before, but this time... Maggie's hands tightened around her glass. "This time I saw so clearly what it meant. The control, the slow disappearing of myself." "The small cruelties hurt deepest," Elliot said softly. "They chip away at who you are." Maggie nodded, surprised by his understanding. "My sister Sarah," Elliot continued, "worked in pediatrics. There was this little girl, terrified of needles. Instead of forcing her or bribing her, Sarah would sit and talk about butterflies. How brave they were, breaking out of cocoons. She'd paint tiny wings on Band-Aids." His voice held such tenderness. The girl stopped being afraid. Sarah knew. Sometimes healing isn't about the big gestures. It's about giving people back their dignity, one small moment at a time. The radio shifted to an old slow song. Elliot stood and held out his hand. "May I?" Maggie hesitated, then took it. They swayed in the kitchen's warm light, not talking, just moving to the gentle rhythm. It wasn't romantic. It was something else. Understanding, safety, the slow rebuild of trust. The song ended. They stepped apart naturally. No awkwardness. "Thank you," Maggie said, meaning more than the dance. Elliot nodded, understanding in his eyes. Sometimes we all need a moment of peace. They returned to sorting the last boxes, working in comfortable silence. The afternoon light slanted golden through the windows, touching everything with warmth. For the first time in weeks, Maggie felt her shoulders truly relax. 3 days until the Foundation's gala, but for now, this moment was enough. Boxes of kindness ready to be delivered, the quiet companionship of people who asked nothing in return, and the steady rhythm of doing good work. 3 days after their quiet moment in the kitchen, Maggie stood in front of a mirror, hardly recognizing herself. The navy blue dress Jonah had helped her select draped elegantly, making her feel both protected and exposed. "Remember," Jonah said, adjusting her wrap, "you're here because Elliot values your practical insight into community needs. That's your truth. Stick to it." Maggie took a deep breath. "What if someone asks about us?" "Then you smile politely and say, 'Mr. Carr's foundation does important work. I'm grateful to contribute where I can.'" Jonah demonstrated the exact tone. Pleasant, but firm. They practiced walking, Jonah insisting she slow down. "You're not rushing to restock supplies anymore. Think of it as moving with purpose." The ballroom took Maggie's breath away. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over round tables dressed in white linens. Flowers scented the air. Well-dressed people mingled, their jewelry catching the light. Elliot appeared at her side, handsome in his tuxedo. "Ready?" "As I'll ever be." Maggie's hand smoothed her dress nervously. "Just be yourself," he murmured. "That's more than enough." The evening flowed more easily than Maggie expected. She found herself in conversation with Mrs. Henderson, a board member with sharp eyes and expensive pearls. "The senior outreach program needs restructuring," Mrs. Henderson declared. Maggie nodded. "Have you considered partnering with local church groups? They often have volunteer drivers and established connections with homebound seniors." Mrs. Henderson's eyebrows rose. "Go on." "And many seniors won't ask for help directly, but they'll accept it through trusted sources, their pastor, their neighbor. If we work through those relationships." Maggie detailed the practical steps, drawing on her experience. "Remarkable," Mrs. Henderson said finally. "Mr. Carr, your friend has quite the practical mind." Elliot's smile held pride. "She sees what others miss." At the veterans' table, Maggie felt more at home. They talked about the recent donation drive, sharing stories of small kindnesses that made big differences. One older veteran had tears in his eyes, describing how a warm blanket helped with his arthritis. "You actually listen," he said gruffly, not just nodding and moving on. Camera flashes punctuated the evening like lightning. Maggie tried to ignore them, but each one made her flinch slightly. She spotted a few reporters taking notes, their eyes following her movements. Elliot touched her elbow. "Walk with me." He led her down a quiet hallway, away from the crowd. The music faded to a gentle murmur. "Thank you," he said softly, "for being here, for helping make this real." Maggie turned to face him. The dim lighting softened his features, revealing the warmth she'd come to know behind his composed exterior. Elliot. His name felt different in the private space. Something shifted in the air between them. He stepped closer. "You've brought something valuable to the foundation." "To—" He hesitated. Maggie's heart beat faster. Words hung unspoken between them. Deeper feelings, growing trust, the slow bloom of possibility. But they both held back. The timing wasn't right. Too much lay unresolved: Lucas's threats, the tabloid stories, her own healing journey. A camera flash broke the moment. Someone whispered loudly about the mystery woman from the wedding. Maggie tensed, feeling exposed. The confidence she'd built through the evening wavered. Elliot's hand found the small of her back, steady and grounding. The touch said everything they couldn't voice: support, protection, respect for her boundaries. "Shall we?" he asked simply. They returned to the ballroom together. The rest of the gala passed in a blur of polite conversations and careful smiles. Maggie kept her spine straight, Elliot's quiet presence beside her like an anchor. When the last guest departed, Maggie stood in the empty ballroom, watching staff clear tables. The evening felt like a dream, beautiful but precarious. She'd survived it, even found moments of genuine connection. But something told her the real challenges were just beginning. The gala's warm glow hadn't fully faded when Maggie's phone buzzed with urgent messages. Her heart sank as she clicked the link Jonah sent. The audio crackled through her phone's speaker. I don't know what's real anymore." Her own voice, twisted and choppy, played back at her. She recognized the context immediately. A conversation with her therapist from months ago when she'd been processing Lucas's gaslighting. But the clip had been edited, cutting out the therapist's questions and her explanations, leaving only fragments that made her sound unhinged. "Where did this come from?" she whispered, hands shaking. "Private investigator." Jonah replied grimly. "Lucas hired him. It's already trending locally." By morning, the damage was spreading. Local news stations picked up the story, running sensational headlines: "Mystery woman in car foundation drama, mental health concerns surface." Maggie sat in the estate's kitchen, watching Jonah scroll through his tablet. The morning sun felt too bright, too exposing. "The board's concerned," Jonah said finally, his usual dry humor absent. "3 donors have already called asking questions." Elliot's work, all those programs. Maggie's voice cracked. "He's meeting with them now." Jonah set the tablet down. "They're recommending he temporarily distance himself from personal associations to protect the foundation's reputation." The words hit like physical blows. Maggie stood, needing to move, to act. "I understand. I'll go." "Maggie, wait!" But she was already heading upstairs, pulling out the duffel bag she'd arrived with. Her fingers brushed the soft sweater Elliot had lent her one chilly evening. She folded it carefully, leaving it on the bed. The packing took minutes. She still traveled light, still carried the habits of someone ready to flee. But this time felt different. This wasn't running from danger. It was choosing to protect something valuable. Her hand hovered over her phone, Elliot's number on the screen. He deserved more than silence. The call connected after one ring. "Maggie, I'm leaving," she said quickly, before his voice could weaken her resolve. "Your work is too important. Those veterans, the seniors, all the people who depend on the foundation, I won't let my problems hurt them." "This isn't what I want." Elliot's voice was tight with controlled emotion. "I know. That's why I have to go." She swallowed hard. "Thank you. For everything." She ended the call before he could respond, before she could change her mind. The drive to Aunt Rosa's felt longer than before. Radio stations were already picking up the story, speculating about the mysterious woman who'd disrupted a wedding, and now seemed to be causing trouble for the respected Elliot Carr. Maggie turned off the radio, letting the road noise fill her ears instead. The familiar ache of shame tried to settle in her chest, but she sat straighter, remembering Elliot's hand on her back at the gala, steady and sure. This pain was different from Lucas's deliberate cruelty. This was the cost of protecting something good, something bigger than herself. She might be leaving the estate, but she wasn't running away this time. Fields rolled past her window, late afternoon sun painting them gold. She was going back to Aunt Rosa's, not in defeat, but to regroup, to fight back properly. The determination didn't completely ease the hurt, but it gave it purpose. As Aunt Rosa's house came into view, Maggie took a deep breath. She'd survived Lucas's worst. She could survive this too, and maybe, just maybe, find a way to turn this pain into something useful, the way Elliot had shown her was possible. The calendar on Aunt Rosa's kitchen wall showed 5 empty squares that needed to be filled. Maggie sat at the worn wooden table, watching her aunt mark them with neat X's. 5 days, Aunt Rosa said firmly. That's what Jennifer needs to get everything in order. Jennifer Martinez, Aunt Rosa's lawyer friend of 20 years, spread documents across the table. Her reading glasses perched on her nose as she organized papers into neat piles. First thing, we filed a police complaint, Jennifer explained, tapping a form. Document everything. The diner incident, the audio recording, every unwanted contact. Maggie's hands shook slightly as she wrote down dates and times. The memory of Lucas at the diner made her pause, pen hovering over paper. Keep going, honey, Aunt Rosa encouraged, setting down a mug of chamomile tea. Day by day, the evidence grew. Jennifer helped draft the motion for a temporary restraining order, her experienced hands highlighting relevant sections of law. The illegal recording is actually helpful to us, she noted. Shows a pattern of harassment. The diner owner, Mike, called on the second day. Got security footage from when he came in, he said gruffly. Shows him getting aggressive. It's yours if you need it. Support trickled in from unexpected places. Dana and Mark, the newlyweds, sent a detailed account of the wedding night. We saw everything, Dana wrote. How scared you were, how he tried to force you to leave. A veteran named James, who'd received housing assistance through Elliot's foundation, stopped by with his wife. They brought banana bread and a carefully written statement about Maggie's work with the donation program. You helped sort the blankets for our shelter, James said quietly. Treated us with respect. That means something. Aunt Rosa's living room became command central. The coffee table disappeared under stacks of receipts, photographs, and witness statements. Each piece told part of the story. Gas station receipts showing Maggie's route that night, time-stamped security footage from the estate gates, statements from wedding guests who'd seen Lucas's threatening behavior. The nights were harder. Maggie lay on the couch, listening to crickets and distant trains. Sometimes she'd catch Aunt Rosa watching her from the kitchen doorway, worry etched in the lines around her eyes. On the third day, Elliot's team sent over their findings. Jonah had compiled a thorough history, Lucas's pattern of controlling behavior with previous girlfriends, complaints that had been dropped after pressure, social media harassment using fake accounts. It's all circumstantial, Jennifer warned, but together it paints a clear picture. Maggie nodded, staring at the stack of evidence. It's like looking at a map of the last few years, all the red flags I ignored. Not ignored, Aunt Rosa corrected firmly. Survived. The town rallied in small ways. Mrs. Chen from the pharmacy called to report Lucas asking questions about Maggie's prescriptions, another documented attempt at invasion of privacy. The local coffee shop owner remembered mornings when Lucas had followed Maggie to work. Like pieces of a puzzle, Jennifer said, organizing the statements. Each one makes the whole picture clearer. On the fourth day, they reviewed everything. Maggie's original police report, the temporary restraining order motion, witness statements, time-stamped photographs, audio recordings of threatening voicemails, Elliot's signed affidavit about the night she sought shelter. We file first thing Monday, Jennifer announced. "The evidence is strong." That evening, an envelope arrived by courier. Inside was an invitation, cream-colored paper with Elliot's foundation letterhead. A press conference, 2 days away, to address recent events. Maggie traced the embossed letters with her finger. Aunt Rosa watched her from across the room. "You don't have to go," her aunt said softly. "I know." Maggie set the invitation on top of the legal papers. "But I think I need to." The 5th day was quiet. Jennifer made final adjustments to the filing. Aunt Rosa baked bread, the familiar smell filling the house with warmth. Maggie sat on the porch swing, watching summer clouds drift overhead. The weight of the past 5 days, all the evidence, the statements, the documented pain felt heavy, but purposeful. Like stones being laid in a foundation, each piece necessary for whatever would be built next. Later that night, as crickets sang their evening chorus, Maggie studied the invitation again. The press conference would be small, controlled, a chance to set the record straight. "Time for bed," Aunt Rosa said, gathering empty teacups. "Tomorrow's paperwork can wait until tomorrow." Maggie nodded, folding the invitation carefully. 5 days of preparation behind her. 2 days until the press conference ahead. She was tired, but it was the good kind of tired, the kind that came from building something solid, something true. The community hall buzzed with quiet energy. Morning light streamed through tall windows, catching dust motes in golden beams. Local reporters filled the first 2 rows, notebooks ready. Behind them sat townspeople, the diner owner, veterans from the shelter program, Dana and Mark from the wedding. Maggie's hands trembled slightly as she smoothed her simple navy dress. Aunt Rosa had helped her choose it that morning, saying, "You look strong, child. Like yourself." Elliot stood at the podium, his presence steady and grounding. He wore a charcoal suit that seemed to absorb the camera flashes, making him appear even more solid. Jonah moved efficiently through the room, distributing press packets. "Thank you for coming," Elliot began, his voice carrying easily. "I'll be brief and direct. Recent events require clarification, and more importantly, correction." He lifted a document, the affidavit. "On the night of June 15th, Ms. Margaret Hart sought shelter at my estate's guest quarters. I provided that shelter willingly, and I stand by that decision." His words were measured, each one carefully chosen. "This document, notarized and filed with proper authorities, confirms her presence there that night." Cameras clicked. Maggie felt the weight of eyes on her, but kept her chin level, remembering Aunt Rosa's words about dignity. "Furthermore," Elliot continued, "we are announcing the filing of legal complaints regarding harassment and illegal surveillance." He paused, letting the information settle. "These include documentation of edited audio recordings distributed without consent and a pattern of intimidating behavior that has been witnessed by multiple parties." A reporter raised her hand. "Mr. Carr, regarding the tabloid speculation?" "I'm not here to discuss speculation," Elliot cut in firmly. "I'm here to address documented facts and defend a fundamental right, every person's entitlement to safety and privacy." The room quieted. Elliot's words hung in the air, simple and profound. "Ms. Hart has demonstrated remarkable courage," he added, his tone softening slightly. "She has chosen to handle this situation through proper legal channels rather than engaging in public spectacle. I ask that everyone respect that choice." Maggie watched faces in the crowd shift from curiosity to understanding. Mrs. Chen nodded from her seat near the back. The diner owner crossed his arms and gave a slight, approving nod. "We have provided detailed press packets," Elliot concluded. "They contain all relevant legal filings, witness statements, and contact information for further inquiries. Thank you for your time." He stepped back from the podium as Jonah moved forward to handle questions. The controlled dismissal was elegant in its simplicity. No room for sensational headlines or dramatic quotes. Through the window, Maggie spotted movement. 2 police officers approached a familiar truck in the parking lot. Lucas had shown up, despite the clear request to stay away. She watched as they served him with papers, the restraining order and harassment complaints. His face darkened, but the officer's presence prevented any outburst. A wave of relief washed over her. Not victory exactly, but vindication. The truth, laid out in plain daylight, was more powerful than any of Lucas's twisted narratives. As the crowd began to disperse, Elliot touched her elbow gently. "My office?" he murmured. She followed him down the hall to a small room filled with morning light. Once the door closed, his formal demeanor softened. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "When the board pressured me to step back, I chose the Foundation's reputation over standing firmly by your side. It was cowardly." Maggie shook her head. "You were protecting important work. Work that means nothing if it doesn't align with its own principles." Elliot's eyes held genuine regret. "The Foundation exists to help people in crisis. What message would we send by abandoning someone who needed support?" "You never abandoned me," Maggie said softly. "You gave me space to handle things my way." "Perhaps." He smiled slightly. "But I promise to do better, to stand more firmly." Through the window, they watched Lucas's truck leave the parking lot. The legal papers would constrain him now. No contact, no approaching her home or workplace, no social media harassment. "Thank you," Maggie said, meaning more than just the press conference, "for helping me reclaim my story." Elliot's eyes were warm. "You did that yourself. I just provided the microphone." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the morning light spread across the town. Something had shifted, not just in the public narrative, but in the private space between them. Trust tested and proven. Respect deepened by shared purpose. The sound of Jonah's efficient footsteps approached. Soon there would be follow-up calls to make, statements to polish, next steps to consider. But for now, in this quiet moment, Maggie felt the first real sense of peace she'd had in weeks. The truth was out, simple and unadorned. She was safe. She was believed. She was standing on solid ground. A gentle breeze carried the scent of autumn through the estate's garden. Maggie sat on a stone bench, watching leaves dance across the lawn. 1 week had passed since the press conference, and the world felt steadier beneath her feet. Elliot approached with 2 cups of tea, his steps unhurried. "Peppermint," he said, offering her a steaming mug. "Jonah mentioned it's your favorite." "Thank you." She wrapped her hands around the warm ceramic, breathing in the familiar scent. They sat in comfortable silence, shoulders almost touching. The morning sun painted everything in soft gold. "The lawyers called," Elliot said finally. "All the paperwork is properly filed. The restraining order is permanent." Maggie nodded, relief settling in her chest. "Aunt Rosa said the rumors in town have died down, too." "About that?" Elliot turned slightly to face her. "People are starting to ask what comes next. The tabloids are spinning elaborate theories about a big society wedding." "Oh no." Maggie laughed softly. "That's not us at all." "Not even slightly," Elliot agreed, smiling. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. "Which is why I wrote this instead." Maggie set down her tea and opened the envelope with careful fingers. Inside was a single sheet of paper, covered in Elliot's neat handwriting. "I vow to honor your autonomy, support your dreams, and walk beside you as an equal partner. I promise to protect your right to choose your own path, to respect your boundaries, and to celebrate your strength. Together we will transform pain into purpose, fear into hope, and service into legacy. This is not a rescue story. It is a partnership founded on mutual respect, understanding, and love. Tears pricked at Maggie's eyes as she read the words again. "Will you marry me?" Elliot asked quietly. "Not for the cameras or the gossip columns, but for us?" "Yes," Maggie whispered. Then, stronger. "But I have conditions." "I wouldn't expect anything less," Elliot said, eyes warm. "The wedding needs to be small, private, and it can't be about you saving me. It has to be about two people choosing to build something meaningful together." Elliot nodded. "What do you envision?" "Dana and Mark's barn," Maggie said. "Where it all began. They could host, maybe even officiate. Aunt Rosa would be there, of course, and Jonah, he's family now too." "Perfect." Elliot took her hand. "Simple, honest, and real. I want to wear a plain dress." Maggie continued. "Something that feels like me." "Whatever makes you comfortable," Elliot agreed. "Though I suspect Jonah will insist on handling the catering." They both laughed, knowing how protective Jonah had become. Later that afternoon, Maggie sat in Aunt Rosa's sewing room, watching her aunt examine a simple cream-colored dress. "It's beautiful," Aunt Rosa said, running her fingers along the hem. "But it needs something." She rummaged through her sewing basket and pulled out a small square of fabric. "Here, a mending patch, sewn with love, because sometimes the strongest parts of us are where we've been repaired." Maggie hugged her aunt tight. No words needed. At the estate, Elliot sat at his desk, finalizing paperwork for a substantial donation to a local survivors advocacy program. The note attached read simply, "In honor of Margaret Hart, whose courage inspires change." Jonah knocked and entered with his usual efficiency. "Venues confirmed. Dana and Mark are honored to host. I've arranged for tight security, discreet, but thorough." "Thank you," Elliot said, "for everything." Jonah's professional mask slipped slightly. "You both deserve this happiness, you know." The day passed in gentle preparation. Maggie and Elliot met for dinner in the estate's kitchen, sharing simple pasta and quiet conversation. "Are you nervous?" Elliot asked. "About marrying you?" "No." Maggie smiled. "About starting this new chapter?" "Maybe a little. We'll write it together," Elliot promised. "One page at a time." Later, as stars emerged in the velvet sky, they said goodnight at Aunt Rosa's front door. Tomorrow would bring their wedding day, but tonight was for peaceful anticipation. "Sleep well," Elliot said softly. "You too," Maggie replied. She watched him drive away, then went inside where Aunt Rosa was putting the finishing touches on her dress. The tiny mending patch gleamed with careful stitches, a small but powerful reminder of how far she'd come. In his bedroom at the estate, Elliot carefully hung his suit and reread Maggie's handwritten response to his proposal. "I choose this partnership freely, with clear eyes and an open heart." Both of them settled into sleep that night with quiet joy, knowing tomorrow would begin exactly as they wished, not with fanfare and spectacle, but with honest words and true promises. The moon hung full and bright over both houses, blessing the space between them with silver light. Tomorrow would come soon enough, bringing with it a new chapter written in their own words, at their own pace, on their own terms. The morning sun painted Aunt Rosa's kitchen in soft gold as she poured coffee into Maggie's favorite mug. Steam curled up like wedding veils, carrying the rich aroma that had woken them both early. "Your mother wore this same hair clip on her wedding day," Aunt Rosa said, tucking a pearl-studded clip into Maggie's dark waves. "Something borrowed, something true." Across town at Dana and Mark's barn, Elliot balanced carefully on a ladder, stringing twinkle lights along wooden beams. Mark passed up another strand while Dana directed from below. "A little to the left," she called. "Perfect, right there where the light catches the old wood." Jonah arrived with boxes of fresh flowers and his characteristic efficiency. "The veterans group just called. They're honored to attend. And the pie delivery from Rosa is right on schedule." By noon, the transformation was complete. Simple white chairs faced an arch woven with wildflowers. Mason jars filled with tea lights lined the aisle. The barn doors stood open to catch the breeze, and overhead, the twinkle, lights waited for dusk. Maggie stood in Dana's spare bedroom, smoothing her cream-colored dress. The mending patch at the hem caught the light, Aunt Rosa's careful stitches forming a heart. She touched it gently, remembering how far she'd come. The ceremony began as the afternoon sun softened. Dana welcomed their small gathering with warm words about choosing love and building trust. Veterans who'd found hope through Elliot's programs sat proudly in their dress uniforms. Mark played soft guitar music that floated on the autumn air. Jonah stepped forward to read his blessing, his usual businesslike manner softening with emotion. "May your home be built on laughter, your partnership on truth, your future on service to others, and your love on the courage to choose each other every day." When it came time for vows, Maggie's voice rang clear and strong. "I stand here having chosen myself first, so I can now choose you freely. I vow to honor my worth, to serve others from strength, not fear, and to build a partnership based on truth and trust. I promise to wake up proud of the life we create together." Elliot's steady gaze held hers as he responded, "I vow to protect your dignity, support your dreams, and walk beside you as an equal partner. I promise to transform challenges into purpose, fear into hope, and service into legacy. This is our story to write together." They exchanged simple gold bands under the twinkle lights just beginning to shine in the early evening. Aunt Rosa wiped tears with her apron as she served her famous apple pie, each slice carrying the sweetness of celebration. The months that followed unfolded like pages in a well-loved book. Maggie launched her Survivors Outreach program, starting with weekly support groups at the community center. She created care packages filled with practical items and handwritten notes of encouragement. Women began to seek her out, drawn by her gentle strength and hard-won wisdom. Elliot expanded the foundation's work, funding a new wing at the community center dedicated to veterans and seniors. He made sure the design included plenty of natural light and comfortable gathering spaces. The sight of elderly veterans teaching teenagers to play chess became a common one. Together, they worked in practical ways, sorting donations, writing grants, meeting with community leaders. Their partnership flourished in the doing of good things, in the quiet moments between big gestures. News came through their lawyer that Lucas had begun court-mandated counseling. The restraining order remained in place, and he faced consequences for his actions. But his power over Maggie's story had faded like old newsprint, replaced by headlines about the community center's success. 6 months after their wedding, they stood together at the ribbon cutting for the new center wing. Spring sunshine warmed the gathered crowd as Maggie stepped up to the microphone. "Courage isn't always loud," she said, her voice steady. "Sometimes it's as quiet as packing a duffel bag. Sometimes it's as simple as choosing to believe you deserve better. This center represents that kind of courage, the everyday bravery of people helping people, of communities coming together, of hope taking root and growing strong." The ribbon fell in a flash of scissors and applause. Inside, sunlight streamed through tall windows onto fresh paint and new beginnings. Elderly veterans gave tours to curious teenagers. Women from Maggie's support group served coffee and shared resources. As the afternoon drew to a close, Maggie and Elliot walked hand in hand through the center's garden. The setting sun painted everything in soft gold, much like that morning in Aunt Rosa's kitchen that felt both yesterday and a lifetime ago. She had left with a duffel bag and a heart that would no longer be anchored by an apology. Now she woke each morning proud of the life she'd chosen, the purpose she'd found, and the love she'd built on her own terms.